Namaskar, hello and welcome viewers. You're watching the special presentation of Sansad TV, The Amendments. As we celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, marking 75 years of independence, we need to pause and reflect upon landmark amendments to the Constitution that have shaped our country. Originally, there were 22 parts and 395 articles in the Constitution of India. As of 2021, there are 25 parts in the Constitution of India with 448 articles. And as of October 2021, there have been 105 amendments of the Constitution of India since it was first enacted in 1950. One of the strengths of the Constitution is that it is a dynamic instrument that can evolve with time by amendments. The Constitution of India is the supreme law that lays down the framework and demarcates powers, procedures, duty, structure, code, and functioning of various government institutions. The Constitution of India is the longest written constitution in the world. It was adopted on 26th of November 1949 and came into effect on 26th of January 1950, also celebrated as the Republic Day. The preamble is the introduction of the Indian Constitution and gives us an idea about main objectives of the Constitution. The preamble to the Constitution declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and a welfare state committed to securing justice, liberty and equality for the people and for promoting fraternity, dignity of the individual, unity and integrity of the nation. The Constitution lays down the structure of nation's polity. It is built on the foundations of certain fundamental values. The vision of our founding fathers and the aims and objectives which they wanted to achieve through the Constitution are contained in the preamble, the fundamental rights and the directive principles. These three may be described as the soul of the Constitution and the testament of the founding fathers to the succeeding generations, together with later part on fundamental duties. The founding fathers of Indian Constitution were aware of the fact that an independent Indian state was going to face many challenges. After colonial rule for almost 200 years, the country was left with widespread poverty, hunger, and deep-rooted socio-economic inequalities. The framers of the Constitution felt that certain policy directions, guidelines, or instructions for the governance of the country were required to handle these problems. Legislatures, executive, and administration of independent India were expected to exercise their powers in accordance with the direction and guidelines given in the Constitution. Article 368 of the Constitution deals with the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution and its procedures. Article 368 of the Constitution deals with the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution and its procedures. It states that the Parliament may amend the Constitution by way of addition, variation, or repeal of any provision in accordance with the procedure laid down for the purpose. However, the Parliament cannot amend those provisions which form the basic structure of the Constitution. This was ruled by the Supreme Court in the Keshwanand Bharti case. It provides for two types of amendments, that is, by a special majority of Parliament and the special majority of Parliament, along with the ratification of half of the state's legislatures by a simple majority. Under Article 368(2), Parliament can amend the Constitution by passing a bill with a simple majority. An amendment of the Constitution can be initiated only by the introduction of a bill for the purpose in either House of Parliament, Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha, and not in the state legislatures. The bill can be introduced either by a minister or by a private member and does not require prior permission of the President. Each House must pass the bill separately. The President must give the assent to the bill. he or she can neither withhold the assent to the bill nor return the bill for reconsideration of the Parliament. After the President's assent, the bill becomes an act, that is, a formal Constitutional Amendment Act, and the Constitution stands amended in accordance with the terms of the Act. Today we'll take a closer look at the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution of India, officially known as the Constitution Sixth Amendment Act of 1956. The exclusive legislative and executive power of the Union was extended to include taxes on interstate sales and purchases of items other than newspapers. The Sixth Amendment Act also expressly empowers Parliament to formulate by the principles for determining when a sale or purchase of goods takes place in the course of interstate trade or commerce. Parliament was also empowered to formulate principles for determining when a sale or purchase of goods takes place outside the state or in the course of the import of the goods into or export of the goods out of the territory of India. Further, it gave Parliament power to declare by law the goods which are of special importance to interstate trade or commerce, and also to specify the restrictions and conditions to which any state law, whether made before or after the parliamentary law, would be subject in regard to the system of levy, rates, and other incidents of tax on the sale or purchase of goods.
The Constitution of India, Sixth Amendment Act 1956, deal with taxes on interstate sale of goods other than newspaper, and it amended Article 269, Article 286 and the 7th schedule of the Constitution. Prior to this amendment, the relevant law was that the state government cannot impose taxes on interstate sale and purchase of goods, as well as import and export of goods. However, state could impose tax on interstate sale only if allowed by the Parliament by enacting a law. Similarly, if certain goods were declared essential goods, the law made by state legislature imposing a tax on sale or purchase must have prior assent of the President. However, difficulties were faced in implementing this provision, as judiciary has expressed divergent views as to the scope and effect of these provisions, more particularly with regard to Article 286 of the Constitution. Further, certain foodstuffs were declared essential by the central government, and it affected the pre-existing state laws. I am of the view that the Constitution Sixth Amendment Act brought a clarity with regard to taxation on goods, sale and purchase of goods in interstate sale, although the provision as it existed prior to the amendment made it clear that in interstate sale or where the goods are declared to be essential goods, it is the central government which will have a final say. But because of the confusion which was created, because of the judgments which came from the court, and the difficulty which came in implementation of this particular provision, this clarity was brought based on the recommendation made by the Taxation Inquiry Committee. After the amendment, with respect to all the essential commodities, there was a uniformity in the taxation on the interstate goods, sale and purchase of goods, as also the levy and collection of taxes and their distribution between the states and the central government.
On 3rd of May 1956, this bill was introduced in the Lok Sabha. The then Minister of Revenue and Civil Expenditure, M.C. Shah, introduced the bill. The Sixth Amendment Act amended Article 286, Article 269 and 7th Schedule to the Constitution of India. There was insertion of Entry 92A, catering taxes on interstate commerce and trade excluding newspaper. According to the guidelines of Entry 92A of List 1, Entry 54 of the state list details the taxes levied on the acquisition or sale of commodities other than newspapers. Such taxes would be imposed and collected in line with the law passed by Parliament, but they would not be part of India's consolidated fund. Instead, they would go to the states in line with any distributional guidelines that may be established by that law.
On the issue why this amendment was needed, we must remember that we are a federal structure of the government and there is a clear demarcation of powers between the center and state, and list 1, 2 and 3 of the 7th schedule of the Constitution prescribe the subjects on which the central government or the state government can make legislation. In accordance with the law as prevalent at that time, because today we are in a different regime under the Goods and Services Tax GST, at that time the regime was different. The sales tax being an important source of revenue, the Taxation Inquiry Committee at that time felt that sales tax should continue to be a state subject, but sales tax on interstate sale shall be brought under the powers of the union government. The central government should collect the same through state government, and it should be apportioned between center and state in accordance with the law made by the Parliament. Therefore, the sales tax continued to be a state source of revenue. However, interstate sale became subject matter of union.
The bill was passed in accordance with the provisions of Article 368 of the Constitution and was ratified by the legislatures of more than one half of the states specified in Parts A and B of the first schedule by resolutions. As community of persons permanently occupying a definitive territory, legally independent of external control and possessing an organized government which creates and administers law over all the persons and group within its jurisdiction is called a state. Effective and efficient governance is the expectation of every civilized society. This role is performed by the government, which is one of the 4 essential elements of the state, along with population, sovereignty, and territory. No state is possible without a government which not only provides security to the people, but also looks after their basic needs and ensures their socio-economic development. The makers of the Indian Constitution wanted to ensure that the government would be sensitive to public expectations and would be responsible and accountable. Each constitution has some technique for alteration, whereby the provisions are changed by method of expansion, rectification, or revision in order to suit the requirements of the present. The framers of the Indian Constitution were aware that the changes would be needed in the Constitution from time to time. Thus, the provision for the amendment to the Constitution were made in order to defeat the difficulties which may arise in the future. The makers of the Constitution wanted to have a bit flexible Constitution and wanted to avoid extreme rigidity in the Constitution of India. They wanted to have the Constitution which could develop with developing nation and which could change with the changing needs of the people. The success of Indian Constitution for a country as diverse and complex as India continues to intrigue, impress and inspire experts around the world. Well, viewers, with that, it's a wrap from my side. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Goodbye for now from my side.